Welcome to Digital Marketing ROI, the podcast that connects marketing to your business's revenue and covers everything you need to know to stay up to date in this crazy digital marketing world.
Welcome to Digital Marketing ROI. My name is Crystal Vivian. I'm your host, and today we are talking about social media, and I am joined by my very favorite people, my team, our social media specialists. We have Joe Kuharek.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we have Melissa Wyrick. Hello. Joe's been with FDS for 5 years now, and Melissa's been with us for almost 2 years.
Almost 2 in May.
Awesome. Well, today I thought it would be good to talk about some social media strategy for businesses in 2025. In the last several weeks, there has been a lot of shakeups and questions and maybe some frustration with that between consumers and social media platforms. We saw a lot of announcements of people saying, I'm leaving Facebook, I'm leaving Instagram, I'm never going to post on Meta again. And then for the most part, 24 hours later, they were posting on Meta again. A lot of people were joining other platforms. We've seen this before. If you go back into 2022, when Donald Trump was banned from social media, a lot of people did leave Meta and they joined other platforms that are still around, but never gained the traction. A lot of those people came back to Facebook, mostly Facebook. I think the biggest one is the Cambridge Analytica scandal. This was back in 2016 when Facebook was allowing Cambridge Analytica to mine very personal data about everyone on its platform. Facebook has a lot of data on all of us, right? But it's depersonalized now. Advertisers can say, okay, I want to target people who are interested in dog food. And so then it just serves it to those people. But we, as advertisers, we don't ever get to see that. In 2016, Cambridge Analytica saw all of the data. They were able to collect it all. That was a huge scandal. Trust in Facebook dropped 66% during that time period. The vast majority of users did not trust Facebook, yet they still used it. Now Facebook has grown to 3 billion plus users, and is still growing every quarter. We want to talk about what's really going on and what businesses need to know about social media going into 2025, given all of these shakeups, and then just given some things to expect. My first question, with all of these scandals and with all of these things that people love and hate about it, Meta is still dominant. Why is that?
First thing that came to my mind, it's a habit you can't break. Even when you delete an app off your home screen, your finger goes there and it clicks on it. It's so ingrained in your brain that you do it over and over again. Even if you don't want to, you do it. And also, for me, MySpace was the first social platform I ever had, but I technically was not allowed to be on MySpace. I did it secretly. But Facebook was the first one that I did and I was allowed on. And it was like the cool thing back then in 2009. It's where all my friends are, all my millennial friends. It's where all my family is. So it's dominant because it's where everyone's at.
I think that's a really good point, Melissa. We forget that social media has been around for 20 years. I remember getting on Facebook when it first opened up to colleges back in 2004. Yeah. So, that's a long time. And I think you're exactly right when you say that it's a habit because people have built their lives on this platform. They're so ingrained with it that I don't think they could abandon it even if they wanted to. And they instill that in their children. We've had 20 years of time on this now. That's how they connect to their grandparents, their parents, and everyone. The ancient Greeks had this idea of the public and private spheres, and you would do two different things in two different places. And I think that's evolved to a point now where that's the same sphere when it comes to social media. Your public and your private life are all right there, and that's just who you are in your life. And it's hard to give that up because that's how you get so much of your own identity.
Well, and
people
especially
love to be known, you want to be known by people, and the attention is enjoyable. Even if you are not actively saying, oh, I can't wait to post this and get 10 likes, that's the amount that I usually get on Facebook. Sometimes I do find myself thinking oh, I'm going to post this. I'm going to take this picture to post it. It's ingrained in our thought processes, I feel like now.
Well, it's ingrained in our history. Back in the early 2000s, you had, Friendster was the first social media that got kind of big. MySpace was really big, but Facebook took it over because it did start with the college kids. And so it felt exclusive. But as it opened up, everybody wanted to get into that club that was exclusive, right? And it was super fun. And and that's what we all did. When Generation X started joining Facebook, the millennials were saying, oh, well, now Facebook's dead because our parents are here and it's not cool anymore. But I think that by that time, we were all adults in our early 20s, and it didn't really scare us away because it was ingrained. It was a habit that we can't really get rid of. But then, too, it was nice in college to be able to see stuff that my brother was posting,
Yeah.
even though he lived far away, and that my parents were posting, even though they lived far away from where I was in college. And that has just grown over time. And MySpace eventually faded away because it couldn't keep up. And there was a lot of back end drama that I don't think most people know about. I highly recommend reading. I know that I think you guys have read it, but for other people, if you're really interested in like the evolution of the social networks, reading Extremely Online by Taylor Lorenz was super eye opening. I read that last year and it dives deep into this. It is a lot harder now because it's been around for so long and it's so ingrained. It's really hard for other platforms to break through the way Facebook did in the early 2000s.
Because people are like, I don't want to learn a new platform. I have to transfer all my life story onto here when it's already all on a different platform. Like, it's a lot of work.
And then also the different platforms have different uses. So I think Facebook is never going to go away. It's got 3 billion users. Instagram has 2 billion users. I don't think Instagram's going to go away. And Instagram is bolstered by Facebook because it's owned by Meta. And they launched Threads early last year. That's got about 300 million users now. That's competing with X, formerly known as Twitter, but it's still not taking off where it's dominant. Let's talk about these other platforms that are popping up. And, I would put Threads in that. Blue Sky, Rumple, Truth Social. They've all got, Truth Social has the least at like 6 million users. Blue Sky has 30 million. Rumple's got 53 million. There's also a bunch of these other smaller social media platforms that people spend their time on, but they're not connecting with friends and family the same way that are on Facebook. My thought there is that it's just too hard for the majority of people, for people who want to have a secondary space or communicate with a niche group. Like X now is favored by people who are really into sports gambling. Like if you're in a niche community, you might be on one of those secondary platforms. But I think the majority of people, it's too hard. I agree with you, Melissa. I think it's too hard to leave.
Well, I think you touched on this point briefly earlier, Crystal, when you were mentioning talking to strangers. Like that's a great thing that social media does, is it allows you to connect with people who you probably never would have met otherwise. I think about my life pre-internet, and we used to have written pen pals through school.
Yeah.
That was your only way to meet someone from another country, especially as a younger person. But as I grew a little older, the world began to feel a little bit smaller, especially with things like online gaming. You could play games or talk to people from another country, not just another time zone. I remember my grandmother used to play World of Warcraft, and she would get on late at night and play with people in Hawaii and Australia, a totally different time zone. My grandma was 78 years old at the time. There's no way she was going to meet some person from Australia.
That's amazing.
What a wonderful way to connect with other parts and other people in the world and different cultures and things like that. But I think that's what's important when you're talking about what it takes to break through. We have our main sets of people, like on Facebook and things like that. But you've got plenty of younger people who are traveling and they're connecting with these other communities and people. You really have to have a space to build a specific type of community. And I don't think we've really seen that in any type of new platform. I think the most innovative idea that anyone has come up with for a social media platform is the metaverse. I don't like it. I don't care about it. I don't really want to use that. But it's the most interesting and different take on where social media could go and that platform idea that anyone else has put forward. With no new innovation, I don't think you're going to see a ton of growth in just a platform clone.
Yeah, it needs to be something totally different to break through, right? And, I get what you're saying about you hate yourself for saying that for the metaverse. And I think there is some potential there, but the barrier to entry is so difficult. You have to buy expensive hardware in order to access it and use it. The interface is not great. Most of the people using it are honestly children. I watched a video last night, even going into these different spaces in the metaverse, and it's all just children screaming. And it's like, I don't need to put on goggles to hear children
Good
scream.
Lord.
I'm
Not at
a
all.
parent. So I agree. And Facebook has kind of mastered the niche community versus your regular everyday social life, right? Like, I'm connected with all of my family and friends, the people that I know. I'm connected with more people that I even really talk to. Although I will say I only have like 2 Facebook friends from high school anymore.
Sometimes you got to clean them out.
I cull my friends list every couple of years because I'm also a pretty private person.
Yeah,
So
you are.
if I didn't see you at Meijer
Yeah.
and stop to talk to you, I'm probably not going to have you on
Yeah.
the list.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, like if I would wave to you if I saw you in the grocery store, then yeah, I'll be friends with you on Facebook. But if I'm going to avoid you or if you wouldn't
Yeah.
recognize me or vice
Yeah.
versa, I don't know. That's me.
You don't need to see the inner workings of my life.
No, 100%. So I have my actual people that I know as my Facebook friends. But then I'm involved in several different Facebook groups for niche interests. Facebook keeps trying to show me more niche interests. I'm really offended that Facebook continuously shows me content from Dole Men's Club and Dole Women's Club.
What?
But it's funny content because it's just things that people find mildly amusing. I get a chuckle every time, and that's why Facebook continues to show it to me. But I refuse to join a Facebook group called Dole Men's Club and Dole Women's Club. But I'm in Facebook groups for, the Ninja air fryer that I use, so I can find other recipes for this particular air fryer. And I'm low-key obsessed with this I just got it. I'm obsessed with it. I love it. I'm in communities for games that I play, for fandoms that I'm in.
Yeah.
A lot of those I've developed friendships with people that I chat with in Messenger, and we know a little bit about each other's personal lives. We're mostly talking about that shared interest, right?
Mhm.
I love that about Facebook. I think Facebook has done a really good job of mixing your core social, but also your connecting you with people who go beyond your community, country, and time zone based on those interests. I think it's hard for other platforms to do that and to connect. And I think, TikTok, that is why TikTok broke through though, because TikTok was different. And TikTok is labeled underneath a social media network. But I don't consider it a social network personally. I consider it an entertainment network that anybody can be a creator on, much
Yeah.
like YouTube. Anybody can create a YouTube show. Yeah, there's comments and stuff like that, but like I'm not building relationships
No.
in the comment section on TikTok or YouTube. I am consuming a lot of content, and if I wanted to, I could create my own content. I think that's why TikTok went off so much or became so popular so quickly, but also is why it's so difficult for businesses. And so I guess that takes us to this next one. And maybe we can start with TikTok of just how should businesses in 2025, given all of this, what platforms are even worth it for them this year?
You can't go wrong with Facebook. I mean, that's where people are. If you want to connect with people, that's where your audience is spending their time. We talk about that a lot as a group. Meet your audience where they are. They're not on niche platforms. Don't start there, first of all, because it's going to be a lot harder for you. That's a place for somebody who's much bigger and has more time and energy to expend on that. If you're a smaller business, go where the people live. And that's where you should either start or be spending most of your time.
You can find when your community connects with each other, your brand can get even stronger.
Yeah, I agree. And if you have a niche audience and that community is on a niche platform like X, then sure, focus there. But otherwise, the vast majority of people are on Facebook. The second vast majority of people are on Instagram. And Instagram does have little sub-communities in that people tend to follow content based on their interests. There certainly are communities, like sub-communities on Instagram as well, interacting with each other in comments and stories. Meta also makes it easy with Facebook and Instagram because there's so many different tools for businesses to use to get their content in front of people. Being able to boost posts and run ads, especially running an effective ad strategy alongside your organic content. I mean, that's a huge win for businesses.
Yeah, that's a great way to expand your reach and get in front of other people who are interested in things about your products that may not have seen it before. And especially if you're creating really engaging content that has a lot of shareability on it, like that's just going to keep building and compounding on it.
Yeah.
Even if people don't follow you, they may see your content when they're scrolling in their explore page,
Mhm.
or when they're scrolling in reels, or when they're like me and they scroll to the end of who you follow. And they might see your content because it matches what they're interested in. And either you get some engagement or they follow you. So it's a win.
Well, Instagram is interesting to me because Facebook has become a content recommendation machine
Yes.
immensely. And Instagram has never really done that outside of its explore page until recently. I am getting in my Instagram feed uh, recommendations for content from brand, like, and they're just showing me content.
Yeah.
I don't follow these businesses. I don't follow these pages. I don't follow these creators, but they're showing up because they're similar to what I do follow and engage with on Instagram. Their goal is to get me to stay on the platform. So they want to show me the most relevant content. I think there is a lot of opportunity on Instagram for businesses because the Instagram algorithm is starting to recommend more content even in the main feed. And they're making changes to extend reach, even though they're now hashtags are irrelevant. Newsflash, this literally just came out within the last week or two that hashtags don't work on Instagram. So we're not using hashtags on Instagram anymore. We're phasing them out as we're creating content. But yeah, X, we don't even offer as a service managing X because it's not worth it. And then TikTok, I don't think TikTok really makes sense for most local businesses because it's harder to find that local audience. And we still don't know what is going to happen with TikTok. And are they going to be able to stay? There's an extension, but we don't know. I think a lot of people have already left the platform anyway. The key takeaways from this so far is that, stick with Meta
Mm-hmm.
and realize that that's where your audience is. Facebook versus Instagram, just think about who your target audience is and where they are. They're on one of those two platforms, maybe both. We didn't talk about LinkedIn, but if you have a B2B aspect to your business or if you're trying to network with professionals for recruitment purposes, LinkedIn is a great place to be. But so now let's talk about the kind of content and how to actually make a difference on whatever platform that you're using, what actually works. So, Joe, you mentioned earlier, focusing on really shareable content makes a huge difference and helps extend the reach of a business's post. Can you expand a little bit about, and what is shareable content? How do you make something shareable?
Yeah, so that's content your audience really finds value in, and they find so much value in it that they're willing to stop what they're doing and either comment on it or share it to their own page with their own added information and share it with their own network. That means you've resonated with them to the point that they want other people to know about it. When you do that, you're going beyond people who follow your page directly. Your friends don't follow all the same things that you do. We're all different people, right? The idea is that if you found value in it and you share it with your friends, they're probably going to find some value in it too, because they're in a similar community as you. And so your business then can reach beyond what your follower network is. Followers, they're not seeing all your content anyhow. So you can reach beyond that and create content that resonates with them and makes them want to interact and stop just scrolling beyond everything.
I love the focus on value. I think that's very true. Though, in addition to being valuable, it also feels like it's about them.
Yeah.
Like they see themselves in the content. And so I want to share this to my stories because this resonates with me.
And just you said earlier about dull women, like you might not have joined the group, but it made you stop scrolling because you laughed.
Yeah, I enjoy these little stories and, I can't even think of a recent example of one. But they also have weird things in the group, like weird trends and inside jokes, where they always measure it with a banana for scale, which I think is hilarious. Yeah.
She's
Called a banana. And they always share their shoe size and their age. Like, I don't know
That's
why
so
they
funny.
do that. It's so weird, but I think it's so funny. I don't want to consider myself a dull person.
Yeah.
I think the truth is that we're all dull to a degree. I want you guys to think back. Think about something that you recently shared if either of you feel compelled to share this, don't feel like
I'm going to look at my story.
Think of something you shared from a business.
Oh.
And why did you share that? Or maybe not just from a business, but a piece of content that you shared. Why did you share it?
Unfortunately, my story is dry right now. There was a meme on there. And it was like, why do you share so much weird crap? And the meme response was, it's my duty to the internet people. I think I shared that because it's a truth to me. People who see themselves in your content are going to share it because I got a chuckle out of it. And also because like my following, my friends, not really family on Instagram, but mostly friends, like I'm the weird sharer. And so I wear that badge with honor. That post was relevant to that.
I shared last night a couple of snippets from a poem that
I loved that poem.
Yeah, it's a poem for the first slide. It was an Instagram carousel post. The first slide was, if you have a 2-year-old, read this. My daughter is almost 3, so she's still 2. So I was like, oh, I'll read this. Also, I love this writer. It was talking about how when your child is first born, everything's really hard and you don't really get any rewards for your child growing up or getting past these milestones of, well, I used to feed you to sleep and I used to rock, wear you in a carrier while I was making dinner. And I don't know when we stopped doing these things, but we stopped doing these things. And then a moment where she sees her daughter playing with a baby the same way. And I literally had a moment like that with my daughter. And of course I'm going to share that because it made one, it made me cry, but 2, it speaks to me. And that's very much where I'm at in my life, having that emotional reaction, but then also, it's people seeing themselves in your content. And that's true on Facebook too. It's things that add value to my life, but it's also something that makes me feel like it was written for me personally, even though I know that it wasn't.
TikTok got it right by saying the For You page.
That's a great point. And everything on TikTok, part of the reason for their success is that page was so, and still is, so good at giving you the exact content that you are interested in.
Their algorithm is good.
It's so good. And that's something that I think businesses need to take away from is making that content about your audience and it's not content that you want your audience to know. It's not about your latest sale. You can talk about that sometimes, but the vast majority of it needs to be about them. One thing that I think that both of you mentioned earlier that I kind of want to expand on is the reach versus followers and how your followers don't always see your post, but if you have engaging content, you will reach more people because of that. Can you expand a little bit more on why that is so important for social media?
Well, social is about being social. It's like I mentioned earlier, we have this idea of the public sphere and the private sphere, and now social media has all of that. It's our space to connect with other people, form these communities, these tribes, these smaller groups, and talk to one another and be a part of something. Businesses are part of that conversation too, because they're part of our everyday lives. Like we don't exist in this vacuum where just nothing happens and we don't buy stuff, need things, or, we don't have to take care of our health or eat food. All of that is important. Having a conversation about these shared experiences helps bring us closer as a social group. It's social media, so we should be being social on it. For a brand to recognize the experience of your audience just makes them want to be a part of your community even more, because now you feel seen, heard, and acknowledged about your struggles or successes and joys. Everyone wants to feel that kind of validation in their lives, and brands can be a part of that too.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was related to the Bennington Pontoon Boat Owners Group. All the owners are in that group. There's like 15,000 members now. Bennington pops in like now and again, like answering questions that users can't ask, but it is so rare that Bennington owners can't answer each other's questions. Like somebody will ask a question and there'll be 15, 20, 25 comments of people weighing in with their experiences. That makes the Bennington owners community so strong because they all have a place to connect and share knowledge. And it's great. Everybody has different varying amounts of knowledge and they're so willing to share it with people who are newbie to the boat world. And it's just awesome to see that. And it's just a great example of a community of fans and a strong brand.
Absolutely. Not every business lends itself to having a community of tight knit fans
Right.
like that, but that is something to strive for. A lot more businesses can do that than they probably think. It is just creating those conversations and creating the opportunities for people to talk to each other. The more that people are commenting on your posts and sharing your posts on their own pages, whether it's their Facebook feed, Instagram stories, or in Messenger, especially if they're sharing it in DMing, like, oh, hey, Joe, I thought of you, so I'm going to send you this post. That's so important. And that is how your brand is built on social media, because every time that happens, your brand and your logo is top of mind for those people. And the more often that happens, the more connected people feel with your brand and the more that your content is going to show up in their feeds. And if they don't like you, if they don't follow your page, if they show up in your feed enough, they're going to. And that increases your followers, which is great, but really it just allows them to connect with you much deeper. This has been a really great conversation. I want to wrap it up by bringing it back to what this podcast is all about, which is a return on investment. How do we tie social media to ROI?
I think that's looking at engagement, certain metrics that show your content is being effective, shares and comments, that people are connecting and resonating with the types of things that you're talking about. That really shows that what you're doing is worthwhile because your audience is finding value in it. With social media, it is about meeting that audience where they are. And so the ROI is more about your audience than it is kind of about you, I think.
What metrics are you tracking for that, Joe?
Well, that's things like we talked about with engagement. So we look at shares, we look at comments. Reactions are important too, because it shows that people are at least willing to interact with it, even if a little bit more passively with a thumbs up. And it's things like reach or on Instagram saves, the ways that your audience is taking time out of their day to do something with your content and not just scrolling past it.
We were reading this article about this rash cream called Tubby Todd. I don't have a baby, but the article was interesting because the product worked so well that people would post user-generated content of the before and after photos of their baby with a rash on their cheek, and then they use Tubby Todd. And then Tubby Todd, that name is very silly, Tubby Todd would share those posts on their story, tagging the person who shared them. And then that person would see that they were tagged by a business they respect and patronize. They would share the shared content back to their story. Then the Tubby Todd users audience would see that not only is the product working, but the business actually takes the time to shout out the people who notice that it's working. The more you interact with your audience, the strength of your brand will grow.
And it's brilliant on their part because before and afters for products like that are key. But how do you get that? Well, that's a great way to get it, but then you're also letting people see themselves on your page because it's content they created and put out. That's something else, Melissa, that you do with Bennington. Not every brand lends itself to UGC, but if there is a way to incorporate your audience taking pictures while they're using your product or services and sharing that on social media, that's super powerful. And then they tied their organic social using all of that UGC. I'm really familiar with this brand as a mom of a toddler. They tied it with a strong paid ad campaign on Facebook. They had Facebook ads that were promoting the sale of their product, but then their content was just UGC of people using the product, but then also just talking about different things with childcare. And they got a huge ROI on that. I think that's a great example. And I think that the metrics you mentioned, Joe, are critical. Focusing on engagement and the extended reach is really big. Well, this was a great conversation. Thank you both so much for your time and expertise. I really appreciate you taking the time. That is it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. It's the best way to let other people know about this show. Also, if you know another business owner or marketing manager who's thinking about social media this year, share this episode with them. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My name is Crystal Vivian, and we'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Digital Marketing ROI.
You've been listening to Digital Marketing ROI from Federated Digital Solutions. Do you have an idea for a future episode or a burning digital marketing question? Text ROI to 45364 to get a link where you can share your idea. Subscribe to get new episodes every other Thursday, plus Tip Tuesday insights every week.
Podcasts by Federated Media.